Make a list, just in your head. The last 3 jobs you had, the last 3 relationships you were in, the last 3 friendships that mattered to you and then ended. Now look at how they ended. Not the surface reason, not what you told yourself at the time. The actual moment when something inside you decided, this is the part where I leave, or where I let it fall apart, or where I make the move that ensures the ending. You don't have to think hard. The pattern is right there. The same betrayal, in different clothes. The same withdrawal, performed by different faces. The same exact way you found yourself standing in the same exact emotional room you swore, after the last time you would never enter again. You are not unlucky. You are not bad at choosing. You are not, despite what you tell yourself at 3 in the morning, broken in some uniquely defective way. You are doing something very specific. You are returning, with the precision of a sleepwalker, to the original scene of a wound you cannot remember, in order to do something to it that you could not do the first time. You are not making the same mistake. You are performing the same scene. Different actors, same script. And you wrote it before you could read. Freud named this in 1920. He called it Wiederholungszwang, the compulsion to repeat. He wrote one sentence about it that should be carved into the wall of every therapist's office in the world. The sentence was this: what we cannot remember, we are compelled to repeat. You are the proof of that sentence. So is everyone you know. By the end of this session, you'll know exactly why you keep ending up in the same emotional situation no matter how many times you swear you won't. Not the bad luck answer, not the bad choices answer, the deeper one. The one that explains why even when you do choose differently, the new choice somehow turns into the old wound on a slightly delayed timeline. Stay with me. There's a patient I want to tell you about. She came to Freud after her 3rd marriage ended in the exact way the first 2 had. She thought she was cursed. Freud showed her something darker and more useful. I'll come back to her. Lie down. Close your eyes. This is your session. Let me describe the moment you keep recreating. It looks different each time, but the inside of it is identical. Maybe it's the moment in every job where you suddenly stop showing up the way you used to. The emails get shorter. The work gets sloppier. You start to feel a contempt for the people you used to admire. By the time anyone notices, you've already half left. You quit, or you get fired, or you stay miserable for another year. The endings vary. The mechanism is the same. Maybe it's the moment in every relationship where, somewhere between 3 and 6 months, you begin to feel a small claustrophobia that you didn't feel before. The person hasn't changed. The relationship hasn't changed. Something inside you is shifted into a familiar position. You begin to find faults. You begin to need space. You begin to imagine the relief of being alone again, even though, when you are alone, you will be miserable and looking for someone new within weeks. Maybe it's the moment in every friendship where you stop replying for a few days, then a few weeks, then realize you have ghosted someone who never did anything wrong, simply because their continued presence in your life had become a kind of pressure you could not name. If any of this sounds familiar, listen carefully. You are not flaky. You are not commitment phobic. You are not allergic to good things. You are running, with great loyalty, an ancient program that was installed in you before you understood what was happening. The program has a goal. The goal is not happiness. The goal is the return to the original wound, in the hope that this time you can master it. In 1920, Freud was 64. He had spent 2 decades watching his patients do something his earlier theories could not explain. They kept choosing the same disaster. The woman whose father had been cold married 3 cold men in a row. The man whose mother had been unreliable found 3 unreliable partners and kept being shocked. The patient whose father had abandoned him at age 7 kept arranging in his career to be abandoned again. Different setups, same ending. Freud tried to explain this with the pleasure principle. He failed. The pleasure principle said humans seek pleasure and avoid pain. But these patients were not avoiding pain. They were arranging it with great precision, and when they got it, they did not look surprised. They looked, on some deep level, satisfied, as if something inside them had finally come home. This was the moment that forced Freud to write beyond the pleasure principle. He realized there was a drive in human beings that operated beneath pleasure and beneath survival, a drive to return, to repeat, to recreate the original injury in new forms. He called it the repetition compulsion. And he said, with characteristic darkness, that it was probably the strongest force operating in his patients' lives and the one they understood least. The reason, Freud said, was simple and devastating. The original wound happened before you had the cognitive tools to process it. You were too young. You were too overwhelmed. You did not have language. You did not have the perspective to understand what was happening to you or why. The experience went in, but it did not get digested. It stayed there, in the body, in the nervous system, as a piece of unfinished business. And the mind, doing its strange work, has been trying to finish it ever since. It tries to finish it by recreating the conditions, by finding new versions of the original people, by stepping back into the original emotional rooms, so that, this time, with adult eyes and adult capacity, you can finally feel what you could not feel then. Master what you could not master. Resolve what was never resolved. The plan is brilliant. The plan never works. Because the new partner, the new boss, the new friend is not actually the original person. They cannot give you what the original person didn't give you. They cannot apologize for what they did not do. They can only play the role you have unconsciously cast them in until you realize they are not actually the parent you are still trying to reach. And then you destroy the relationship and look for the next casting. This is the part most people refuse to hear, so I'll say it once. You are not the victim of your patterns. You are the playwright. You write the script before each scene. You choose the actors. You set the stage. You give them their cues. And when they perform the role you assigned them, you act surprised every single time, as if you had not been the one auditioning them. Let me tell you about James. James is a composite. He doesn't exist as one person, but every detail comes from real cases I've researched. He is 38 years old. He lives in New York. He has founded 3 companies. The first one went under at the 4-year mark. The second one went under at the 4-year mark. The third one is currently, right now, somewhere around the 3.5-year mark, and James is doing something he doesn't understand. The third company was thriving. 6 months ago, James had just closed a $7 million funding round. The product was working. The team was excellent. Customers were happy. By every external metric, James was about to have the breakthrough he had been working toward since he was 22. In the last 3 months, he has done the following. He has stopped responding to his co-founders' messages for days at a time. He has fired 2 of his most loyal early employees over disagreements that, in retrospect, were not really about what he said they were about. He has started a feud with a lead investor who put $2 million into the company. He has been showing up late to board meetings. He has been drinking more than he used to. And last week he sent a strange, cryptic email to his entire team that hinted, without saying it, that he might be stepping down. His co-founder asked him to talk. James canceled the meeting twice. The third time he showed up and told his co-founder, without making eye contact, that he didn't know what was wrong with him. That he had been working toward this for 16 years. That now that it was working, he could not seem to stop himself from breaking it. James went to a therapist last month. He told the therapist he thought he had self-destructive tendencies. The therapist asked him a question. The question was, what happened in your family when you were doing well as a teenager? James was quiet for a long time. What had happened, he eventually said, was that his father had become competitive with him. Subtly at first, then less subtly. By the time James was 16, every achievement of his became a reason for his father to make a cutting comment, or to bring up his own youthful accomplishments, or to find a way to make James feel small again. James learned, before he was 18 years old, that thriving was the thing that cost him his father's love. So he became very good at thriving up to a certain point, and then, just before the breakthrough, finding a way to fail. 20 years later, sitting in his therapist's office, James realized he had been doing this on a 4-year cycle his entire career. Each company, at year 3 or 4, just as success became real, he would arrange for the destruction. He had thought he was unlucky. He was not unlucky. He was running his father's program with such precision that you could set a clock by it. I want you to do something right now. Place one hand on your throat. Just rest it there. Take one slow breath and notice if there is a small constriction there. The narrow band, just above the collarbone, just below the jaw. For most people listening, there is. That place is where the body holds the words you didn't get to say to the original person, the complaints you couldn't make as a child, the boundaries you couldn't set, the truth you couldn't tell, because telling it would have cost you everything. So you swallowed it. And it has been waiting there ever since, looking for someone safer to say it to. Every relationship you sabotage, you are trying to deliver that swallowed message to a substitute. The new boss becomes the parent who never listened. You finally tell them off. The new partner becomes the parent who didn't see you. You finally walk out. The new friend becomes the parent who let you down. You finally cut them off. And it feels for a moment like power, like vindication, like the message has finally been delivered. It hasn't. The original person is still the original person. The substitute was just a costume. And tomorrow, your nervous system will start looking for the next casting, because the message is still undelivered, and the body still believes that, this time with the right replacement, the wound might finally close. This connects to everything we've discussed. The fear of being happy in our last session was the passive version of this same wound. This is the active version. The wound dampening your joy in episode 19 is the same wound demolishing your work and your relationships in this one. The first wound from episode 11, the one you cannot remember, is the wound being repeated. The mask in episode 6 was built to hide it. The exhaustion in episode 15 was the energy spent maintaining it. They are all the same condition, expressed at different volumes. Now let me tell you about the patient I promised I would come back to. She came to Freud in 1922. She was 37 years old. She had been married 3 times. Each marriage had ended, after roughly 4 years, in the same way. Her husband had cheated on her with a woman younger than her. She had discovered it through a similar series of clues. The aftermath had been identical each time. She had filed for divorce. She had moved cities. She had told herself she had terrible taste in men. Freud worked with her for 14 months. And what he uncovered, slowly, painfully, was the diagnosis that has been quietly explaining women like her ever since. She had grown up in a house where her father had openly conducted affairs while her mother pretended not to notice. The child version of her had felt, on some pre-verbal level, that her mother's silence was a kind of permission, that the mother had been complicit in her own betrayal. The child had also felt, with the strange logic of children, that the affairs were somehow her fault, because her mother was so consumed by them that she could not be fully present. 3 decades later, the woman had spent her entire romantic life, without knowing it, trying to fix this. She had chosen 3 times men who had the early signs of being unfaithful. She had ignored those signs each time. She had been the one to introduce her husbands to younger women, in 2 cases the women they eventually had affairs with. She had created with great care the exact emotional shape of her childhood home, with herself in her mother's position. And then she had broken her marriages in the same way her mother had not, hoping each time that this would somehow vindicate the child she had been. It never did. Because the child she had been needed the mother to act, not the wife to act. The substitute could not deliver what the original could not give. So she had to do it again, and again, and again. Freud told her, gently, that she did not have bad luck, that her marriages were not happening to her. She was producing them, with extraordinary unconscious craftsmanship, and the only way out was to stop trying to finally make her mother see, by recasting her in 1,000 different bodies. The mother by then was dead. There was no one left to see her. She had to see herself. This is the master mechanism. Self-sabotage is not the enemy of your healing. Self-sabotage is your healing trying to happen in the only way it has ever known how. It is the unfinished business of the original wound, attempting completion through repetition. The problem is that repetition does not complete the wound. Repetition deepens it. Each new sabotage is one more layer of evidence that you are unworthy, that life is unsafe, that the original injury was correct. The repetition makes you a more skilled victim of yourself. So what do? You do not try to stop sabotaging. Trying to stop creates a war between 2 parts of you, and the part that wants to sabotage is older and more powerful than the part that wants to be free. The part that wants to be free will lose, every time. What you do instead is begin to notice the cast. The next time you feel the old contempt rising for a new person in your life, before you act on it, ask one question. Who does this remind me of? Not consciously, underneath. The answer comes very quickly if you let it. It will probably be a parent. It will sometimes be a sibling. It will occasionally be a teacher or an early authority figure whose particular flavor of harm shaped you. Whoever it is, that is the person your current target has been cast as. In the moment you see the casting, the spell begins to weaken. Not all at once, but it begins. You also begin to notice the script, the familiar feeling that arises just before you sabotage, the specific sequence, the way your body knows the next step before your mind has decided. That sequence is the script. It has been performed so many times that it runs on muscle memory. The first time you watch it run without acting on it, something begins to shift. You are no longer the actor. You are the audience. And the audience, sitting in their seat watching their own play, has a power the actor never has. The power to notice that the play could end differently. You do not need to figure out how to break the pattern. You need to begin to see the pattern as a pattern. The seeing is the breaking. Slowly, imperfectly, over time. But seeing is what the body has been waiting for. The repetition is what the body does when no one is watching. The moment you start to watch, the body, finally, begins to consider that there might be another way. Tonight, before you sleep, ask yourself one question. Whose voice do I hear when I am about to destroy something good? The answer is not metaphorical. Some part of you knows whose voice it is. It is the voice that taught you that thriving cost you love. It is the voice that taught you that wanting too much would be punished. It is the voice that has been the silent director of your last 15 years of sabotage. Naming it does not silence it, but it begins to separate you from it. You begin to realize that the voice is not yours. It is a recording of someone who is probably not even alive anymore in your life. And recordings, once you know they are recordings, lose some of their authority over you. In our next session, we'll talk about the specific way this pattern shows up in love. We'll talk about why you keep choosing the partners who will hurt you in the exact same way, and why Freud, watching this happen in patient after patient, called it the most predictable phenomenon in psychoanalysis. This has been your session on Sigmund Freud Explains You. If you want to understand what your mind is hiding from you, subscribe. New sessions every day,